So the next demo is by a multi-award-winning home chef who has been entering and winning cooking contests since 1990. Her recipes are published in nationally known magazines, cookbooks, and online publications. She's competed in the World Food Championships for 6 years. She's a food blogger, a TEDx speaker, and runs goodgriefcook.com. So please help me welcome the always incredible Lisa Keys from the Good Grief Cook.
Hello everyone, this is Lisa Keys from Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, home cook and sous vide enthusiast. And today we are making a dessert, a chocolate layer cake, something really decadent for the holidays. And I've worked on this recipe for a little bit because it's very different to make a cake, 6-inch layer cake sous vide versus something in a jar. Now, these jars have their place. When my son was in Afghanistan, a really good friend would make cakes in a jar and mail them to him. And he absolutely loved receiving a cake in a jar. I, on the other hand, do not like cakes in a jar, except if they're being mailed to our military, of course, because I just don't like the shape. I don't like that little tiny dessert. I want a big, nice slice of cake with a really decadent filling in the middle and, some kind of frosting on the outside, especially at Christmas or really any other holiday. So let's get started. It's really like making a typical cake. You're going to spray your cake pan. I like this Wilton spray, but there's also a brand called Baker's Joy, which is really great to ensure your cake's going to come out of the pan. I always line a chocolate cake with a piece of parchment paper in the pan. And, that's the easy part. That's done. The next thing we're going to do is just mix up our ingredients. And I always start with my dry ingredients, and I pre-measured everything. I measured it on a scale. And this mixture is just flour, cocoa powder, salt, and a little bit of baking soda. And you'll get the recipe with all the measurements. I include both the weights and cup measurements. So if you don't use a scale for accuracy, I suggest you do, but if you don't, you'll have the cup measurements too. The next thing we'll do is, this is brown sugar. You can use light or dark, whatever you like, whatever you have. And we're just going to mix 1 egg into the brown sugar and stir that maybe a good 30 seconds. Give it a good whisk. Then you're going to add the rest of your wet ingredients. I've got buttermilk. I've got some instant espresso. I did a 1/4 cup of hot water, about a teaspoon of really good espresso powder. This really brings out the taste of the chocolate in the cake, along with the salt and the vanilla. They all work together to just heighten the flavor of the chocolate. And then a teaspoon of vanilla goes in, and 3 tablespoons of melted butter. And that is all your ingredients for the cake. Give them a good whisk. I use these measuring cups instead of bowls just so you could see. I didn't have any clear glass bowls, but since these measuring cups were clear, I thought they would work well. Now, you can pour your wet into your dry or your dry into your wet. It makes no difference to me. weighed out all those ingredients. I really do like scraping every single bowl to get everything in there. Again, just a gentle whisk to incorporate everything. So now I want to show you how I set this up for the immersion circulator. I use magnets to help keep this from floating. I also have this metal tray, which is magnetic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this big magnet and I'm going to stick it in the center of this metal tray. Okay, this is pretty heavy now. Then I'm going to take this smaller magnet and I'm going to put it in the bottom of my Ziploc bag. Now what you can see is you can attach your bag to this tray. And you can take your pan and fit it down inside your bag, right on top of that small magnet. And just try and center everything, okay? Now you can pour your batter into the pan, fold back your bag, open it wide, and just pour your batter in. I hope you can see all this. I think you can. The immersion circulator is set up for 198 degrees Fahrenheit, and this cake will sous vide for an hour. Now, 198 degrees is really hot, so you don't want to be sticking your hands in there. So now what I've been doing, which is a little different than the initial video I had showed on my blog, is I am going to close up this bag. Before doing that, I put a plate, 6-inch plate, I invert it over the top of the pan. They line up the edges, they line up perfectly, and that just keeps the bag from inverting when we do this displacement method of getting the air out into the batter. So what I did was I just took this apart because I wanted to show you how I displace most of the air out of the bag before putting it in this really hot immersion circulator. So before I actually attach that, I will seal this bag as much as I can. Maybe just leave a little corner open. And then this is a bowl of just tap water. Okay, I can put my hands in there and I'm not going to get burned. So I just drop this into the bowl and it helps displace the water. I mean the air. I don't know why I keep saying water. And then when I get that as submerged as possible, I will just seal this little end here. And you can see, I mean, it still floats, right? It's still floating in there. So I'm just going to take it out. And I am not opposed to using the straw to suck out the rest of the air as if I am a human vacuum sealer. So I'm going to just open up one little corner because I just want as much air out of here as possible. Let's see how much more air it can draw out. Does anybody else do this? I know. So home cookish, amateur. But it works. So I like it. Okay, Now I'm going to attach it, and it is ready to go in the immersion circulator. $198 for an hour. This is looking good. We'll be back in an hour. You can see that it's submerged and rather level. So here we go. I took the cake out and opened the bag and let it sit for about 10 minutes. And then with the scissors, I just cut the bag away because I'm not going to use that bag again. Go around the surface, and then let's give it a flip. Hopefully it just comes right out of the pan like it's supposed to. And it does. And we just take that off. And here we are. 6-inch, very moist chocolate cake. I'm going to let it cool completely, and then I will fill it and frost it and show you how it looks. So just a couple of caveats about making this cake. First, I have named this method of making a cake the Sous Vide Keys method, and I've named it after my son because he loved to take risks, and this cake is not without its risks, so I wanted to warn you about that. It is a work in progress, and I think the ability to submerge the cake in the water and keeping it level is the most difficult part. And I'm hoping that someone with a chamber vacuum sealer will try it and see if being able to get that air out that way will ensure that you can set it and forget it, because right now you can't. As this cake rises, the air underneath that plate is pushed up, and the bag will bubble up, okay? So, or blow up, and you need to be there to release that air so that you ensure that the cake stays level. So, you know, stay in the kitchen, do some other chores while this thing is cooking, and, you know, kind of keep that side eye on it, okay? Now, why even do this? Well, for me, like I said earlier, I'm not a fan of that jar look. So I prefer, you know, what looks like a real layer cake. Also, bakers, we are all different. We all measure different. Our ovens are different. And so sous videing anything is all about accuracy and consistency. And that's why I'm trying this. I want to be able to bake the same cake anywhere, anytime, anyone's kitchen, any cook trying it. It will always come out the same from my house to yours. And a sous vide cake bakes up really moist, and it is cooked on the outside through to the inside to the other side exactly the same. There are no crusty edges. There is no over brown crusty top. There's nothing like that with the sous vide cake. And because it's so moist, you don't need a simple syrup to moisten it. All you need is maybe some powdered sugar dusted over the top, but as you can see, I dressed it up with some chocolate Nutella, mascarpone filling and frosting. And that's really basically just equal parts Nutella and mascarpone cheese. You can, vary that as you like the flavor, but no sugar needed. And then, some fresh strawberries, because fresh fruit, the tartness of the fruit contrasts super well with the rich chocolate cake and frosting. And then, for a little texture, I put some roasted hazelnuts on the side. And so this cake is kind of like a fudgy brownie almost, maybe like one of those flourless chocolate cakes. It's a really rich, chocolatey, moist texture. And so I hope you try it. And if you have a chamber vac, please try it and report back to me. Okay? Thanks. You're going to love it. Perfect for the holidays. It's beautiful, right?
Lisa, you are my hero. I don't know how you do these types of things that you do, and just the amazing way that you approach different desserts. And Lisa is here with us today, so we're going to bring her on the virtual stage with me, get someone up here that knows what they're doing, to answer any questions you have. People have been asking some of the comments, and we're going to get Lisa up here to help answer them. So if you have any more questions, be sure to drop them in the comments. Seth is behind the scenes, and I think he is promoting Lisa now. Lisa, welcome to the showcase. Can you hear us? We can see you. Interesting. I can see you. Let's see. Seth's behind the scenes. Seth, can you make sure that it's going through? Lisa, can you refresh? Let's see if that works. Always fun doing the online events. You never know what sort of technical difficulties will come up. I always say if you haven't run into technical difficulties online conferencing, then you probably don't have enough virtual friends, and you should go out there and get some. Any luck, Lisa? Sounds like we might not have Lisa with us. Well, I'll try it.
Mic is on.
We can hear you, but hey, we are going to go on to the next demo. Maybe we'll pull Lisa up afterwards. If we can figure out her sound issues, we will then.
You can hear me, but I can't hear you.
So we're going to go on to.
All I can say is if you can hear me, if you want to write your questions, I will respond to your written questions. I would love for someone to try this using a chamber vac. Well, the advantage for sure is that if you are a baker, you will know that anytime you bake a cake, the outside edges of the cake and the top of the cake get overly browned. And you will often see bakers trimming all those edges off. With a sous vide cake, there is no trimming necessary. You have a perfectly moist cake. So to me, that's one of the main advantages. It's also not necessary to use any kind of simple syrup. I've done several kind of cakes. I've done a carrot cake, an almond cake, this chocolate cake, and they come out so perfectly moist. You do not need to moisten the cake with any kind of simple syrup. Click the setting wheel at the top of your screen. Yes. Click the setting wheel. And then what? Try changing the audio option. The only option I get is built-in microphone. what's strange is that I heard him perfectly well in the and then, oh yeah, that is great, Tess. Absolutely. In hot weather, you don't want to have to turn your oven on. That's also wonderful. Also everybody's oven is different. So 350 degrees in my oven is not going to probably be the same in your oven. So sous vide is that one place where we all can consistently get the right temperature and time. Like the carrot. Okay, so Dan is asking, did I need to change the recipe for sous vide cooking? I believe with sous vide cooking, you don't need as much fat in your recipe. I don't really know all of the science behind it. Mine is, I do everything by trial and error. And I was making this chocolate cake. I think any cake that you can steam, you can probably not even have to vary that kind of a recipe. If you can already steam the cake, you could probably use that same recipe in sous vide. My carrot cake, again, it was really just trial and error for me. I do not use regular cake batter, and I do believe you need to adjust the amount of fat. So if you're going to do some trial and error, that's probably what I would do. Let's see if there's any more questions. Someone's asking me about gluten-free pastries. I have never baked gluten-free, so I can't answer that. The time and temp, again, was a little bit of guessing. I knew that around 200 degrees sous vide would be enough to set the eggs and the liquid ingredients. So that's kind of how I arrived at that. And then the hour time frame, which by the way is usually way quicker than a sous vide cake in a jar. Usually those cakes in jars take a couple of hours. Again, it was just a trial and error thing for me. And see, I'm doing all the work for you guys so that you don't have to do all that guessing stuff. But you know, it's fun. It's innovation for me, and it's interesting. The experimentation is interesting. Instant pot recipes can be transferred to sous vide pretty easily. That's great. So if you have Instant Pot recipes, you can probably use those cake recipes in your sous vide. Thanks, Kathy. And again, high altitude, there probably is some difference, but I am not at high altitude, so I cannot tell you how to do that. I'm just looking at the rest of your questions. Well, it looks like that might be all the questions.
Awesome, Lisa. Thank you very much for Lisa joining us there. It's great, her knowledge. She is a multi-award winning and competition winning baker. She does some amazing things with recipe creation and coming up with different ways to cook great things. So I love hearing from people like that just they used sous vide and different types of cooking techniques to accomplish something, not just to do it. If Lisa made the cake with sous vide and it didn't turn out well, she wouldn't talk about it because she is always trying new things and she tries to stick with what works. So I love getting that kind of justification for when sous vide can actually, make a difference in what you're cooking.